Could Manchester United's youth tradition be at risk? United have always been defined by youth, from the Busby Babes to the class of '92 and beyond. But right now, that tradition could be under real pressure. Kobbie Mainoo isn't getting regular game time. United's 88-year academy record looks shaky. And even the increased youth recruitment under Ineos comes with risks. So the big question is, are United handling their young players the right way? Okay, so I mentioned a few of the issues there, but I'm going to start with Kobbie Mainoo. He is the face of United's newest generation of youth academy graduates, but right now he's not starting. Amorim says he rates him, but what's the actual plan? Did they see him as a long-term replacement for Bruno, or just a good player but one not worth building a team around? So we've seen reports this week of Kobbie Mainoo and how he intends to fight and regain his place in the starting 11. That extends to things like having a new chef at home. So anything he's willing to try, including working hard, and he's putting out the right messages to show that he's obviously not giving up. That's something that Marcus Rashford was accused of when it looked like he was being frozen out, but we cannot say that about Kobbie Mainoo. He looks like he's going to get his head down and fight for his place both in the United team and in the England team for the World Cup ahead at the end of the season. So how likely is it that Mainoo can regain his place in the starting 11? If he's to be fighting it out with Bruno for that midfield spot, then it seems unlikely. I can't see Bruno getting any injuries or long-term suspensions or anything that would keep him out of the team, and United rely on Bruno too much to see him dropped. So can he take Ugarte or Casemiro's place? And again, that seems unlikely. Amorim seems to prefer at least one of the two, what would you call them, signature defensive midfielders for United. So it's unclear how we see Kobbie Mainoo getting into this team. So if Mainoo manages somehow to displace Bruno from the team, by doing that he'd surely have to come up with a level of goals and assists that is on par with Bruno, or bring something to the team that Bruno doesn't. Maybe Bruno moves further forward in the team and he displaces Cunha or Mbeumo, for example. Again, I see this being unlikely, but if he can manage it, then surely then we have got a player who is of the required quality. And I think that's the question that the likes of Amorim and Wilcox, the director of football, have at the moment, is where is Mainoo's ceiling? How good can he be? So what should he do at this moment in time? He's going to get his head down, as he said, and he's going to work hard and try and get his place back in the team. If he can do that, then surely it's only a matter of time before he signs a new contract. But if he can't, and that seems the more likely in this situation, then it's more likely that he's going to want to leave. Obviously, being a United fan, he's not going to want to leave lightly. But if it's about starting and playing football regularly, if it's about getting an England place, then maybe he will look to do so. Would United cash in on him in January? Is that the plan? Is the plan to swap him for a Baleba or a Wharton come January? Is the idea to freeze him out of the team long enough that it's clear to Kobbie that he needs to move on? Again, I don't know what the thinking is, but these are some of the questions that his lack of game time is bringing up. So Kobbie's contract situation then, it's thought he's on around 20,000 a week at the moment, and there have been negotiations ongoing for a good while. And there are various reports about how much Kobbie was looking to earn in those negotiations, but there was always a kickback on crazy figures from Mainoo's camp. So it could be down to promises. Maybe Kobbie was looking for a promise or a guarantee of regular game time before he would commit his future to the club. Again, we don't know what was talked about in those meetings, but this does bring us on to our next topic, which is Ineos's youth recruitment. So Ineos have shown that they're serious about youth recruitment. From day one, Jim Ratcliffe said, we don't want Mbappe, we want to sign the next Mbappe. And it looked like that's what they were doing with the signings of Chido Obi, even players like Aidan Heaven and Diego Leon as well, a little bit older, but potential for first team involvement there. The question I have though is, if United are trying to bring in young players like that and poach them from other clubs like they did with Chido, what are they promising them? Are they promising them game time? Are they promising them high wages? Is there guarantees of first team involvement? How does this mirror, I suppose, the Kobbie Mainoo situation? Are young players going to start looking at Kobbie's situation and think, maybe I won't take the the risk of joining United at this young age. So taking Chido Obi from Arsenal was obviously a huge coup at the time. His performance at underage levels and the amount of goals he scored meant that he looked like he was going to be a lethal striker going forward. He got a number of games last season, mostly due to injury and a lack of options for United up front, and also a lack of goals. This season we haven't seen him yet, and he was even left out of the League Cup squad against Grimsby, where you'd normally think you'd see some young players involved. That omission led to a reaction from Chido himself, going on his Instagram profile and removing United from his bio. It was this disappointment, I'm assuming, that led to that. But was there a broken promise in there as well? From Amorim's perspective then, is Chido ready for first team involvement? He didn't pull up trees last season when he played, even though he did look better than Højlund at times. So it would be understandable if Amorim wants to ease him in or wants to see more from him before he does eventually start playing him more regularly. But when you see the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool playing 15 and 16-year-olds, you can see why Chido would be unhappy. He's a few years older than those players, and so he should be further along in his development. So where does that leave us? We have to trust that the first team coaches know best when it comes to players' development. But what signals does it send to other young players when the likes of Chido isn't getting in the first team squad? Below Chido then in the youth setup is another young player, Gabriel, who looks like he could be the next big prospect for United. He's currently 14 and will be turning 15 in the early days of October, I believe. He's got huge potential. There's massive hype around him already, being nicknamed Kid Messi. There was talk of him being able to leave this summer, and United were worried that he would leave as well, as he isn't able to sign a professional contract for another 2 and a bit years. So again, with this type of player, how do United get them to stick around? What promises can be made? What sort of wages can be offered? And what sort of first team involvement can be guaranteed for players who could get that first team football in any number of places? JJ himself then mightn't have as many options as he does right now in the future. When he gets to 17 and signs his pro contract, that will mean that any team will have to pay a huge transfer fee to take him. So if he wants to go to the likes of Barcelona or Real Madrid, there's an option to do so at this age and get a huge sign-on bonus while doing so. So a lot of it comes down to the ambitions of the player. On United's side, they can offer high wages and maybe some first team minutes as well, but surely that's going to impact the first team squad of senior players. Ineos have been trying hard to keep the wage structure under control, and surely promising minutes to young players when you're putting senior players under pressure and under severe competition, saying that if their performance is dropped, that they'll be moved out of the team. Surely that's not conducive to creating the atmosphere around the first team squad that they're looking to create. So speaking of the first team squad then, United's 88-year academy record is looking shaky. The record, which began in 1937, has seen United feature a homegrown, that is an academy graduate player, in every matchday squad since. With Kobbie Mainoo being the only academy graduate who's looking close to first team minutes on a regular basis, it's only going to take one injury or suspension for this record to be at risk. Now, Amorim himself has said that he doesn't want to be the one responsible for breaking this record. So that would make us assume that he's going to include players from the under-21s or from the academy in matchday squads just to try and keep this record going. But that's not what United is really about. What United is about is having young players with the required quality to earn their place in that first team squad and to earn minutes in the first team. So hopefully some of the younger players in our youth system can make that step up to the first team and get some regular minutes soon, so that all the pressure isn't on Kobbie Mainoo and Amorim to keep this record going. And finally, the last thing I wanted to speak about is the weight of expectation on young players at United. So any young player that breaks into the United first team immediately has a lot of pressure on their shoulders. If they do well, then the crowd thinks this is our new hope. This is how we get back to where we belong. This player is the way. And that is an enormous amount of expectation and pressure that doesn't need to be on a young player's shoulders. What United ideally would have is a successful first team of senior players that a young player could come in, learn from, and see how they do things without having all of the weight and pressure on them. Unfortunately, United squad isn't really in that position at the moment though. They're constantly underperforming and a lot of the players are questioned as to whether they're good enough for United. So that leads to the added pressure that I mentioned on the young players that we have coming through, but not just them. Any new players we have coming into the team, slightly older, like the likes of Sesko, Dorgu, Ahmad even, there's a lot of pressure on their shoulders as well, and they are still quite young. We've seen in the last week, Ahmad got a lot of abuse on social media for posting a picture of him and Garnacho. Garnacho himself was a United Academy graduate who ended up getting a lot of abuse, although a lot of it deserved. The pressure still, nonetheless, is there. The likes of Sesko has been compared to Hoyland, and were we doing the same or making the same mistake again by bringing in a young player and asking him to shoulder the burden of being United's main number 9? So how do we get around this issue then? Well, the easiest way for young players to have less pressure on their shoulders is if they were coming into a successful team. In theory, the best way to have a successful team is to have ready-made players who are performing week in, week out. We have the likes of Cunha and Mbumo now, nice signings that were ready-made players, but again, quite expensive, and it may not be feasible to keep spending to those levels. So it looks like we'll have to keep introducing young players to the team as we have been. There are two things that could help the situation though. The first one is fan pressure. Can the fans ease off on the younger players? Is this something that's possible in the social media age? I'm not quite sure. But if United fans in particular could go easy on their own players and show a little bit more support at times, I think that would help a lot. More importantly, and surely to have a greater impact though, is if United can win consistently again. If the United first team is performing and scoring goals and winning matches, then obviously straight away there would be a lot less pressure on each of the players and the manager as well. So when you put it all together, you can see why some fans are calling this a youth crisis. But maybe it's less about one crisis and more about whether Amorim and Ineos can balance the short-term need for wins with the long-term tradition of trusting young players. For me, that's the real question. Can United stay true to their history while building for the future? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this really a youth crisis, or is it just growing pains under Amorim and Ineos?